Hi everyone, welcome to the Witching Week. Today is episode number 84. Today we're talking about the Olympic Games, we're talking about the critters that are currently invading my home, and we're talking about the Lammas Games, athletic competitions that are held around Lammas. So grab a cup of tea, get comfy, put some incense on, and we'll explore the Witching Week. Hi witches, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Today is episode number 84. I've just got to get my disclaimer in at the beginning. You might be able to hear the house making a little bit of noise. Some of our pipes are rattling this morning, but the gardener has turned up super early today. So it was one or the other. It's the rattling pipes or the grass cutting, which I've got no doubt is going to be starting soon. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Wren. I'm known as the Cemetery Witch because I live on a cemetery, and every Friday we have an episode of the Witching Week where we get together, we have a cup of tea or something nice together, and we discuss the wheel of the year, the seasons, what's going on in the news if it's relevant, and just generally catch up with the week's happenings. So how are you doing? I had very little sleep last night. I had nightmares for some reason. So I'm a bit bleary-eyed this morning, but I'm here, I'm happy, I'm enthusiastic. Let's do tea and incense before I forget. So I am currently, let's do incense first. I'm burning some positive vibes, which hopefully by burning that we shall instill some positive vibes into my household. I'm always very positive anyway. I'm always very happy, even though I'm a realist. Always like to look on the bright side of life. And I am drinking some strawberry and watermelon instant tea from Whittard, which was recommended to me by someone on my Patreon. So thank you, Jasmine. That was a lovely suggestion. I got that for my birthday. You know, you're getting old when you start asking for things like special teas and when you just, what else did I ask for that was like very old lady? You know, when you start asking for like toffees and certain chocolates that you then just pop away in the cupboard and save for a special day, you know you're getting older when you start asking for all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think my husband was like, really, you want some tea for your birthday? But yeah, I wanted tea, so there it is. So how are you guys doing? How was your witching week? What have you been up to? Let me know in the comments. Well, we've had all 4 seasons here this week with weather. We've had January, we've had May, we've had October, and today looks kind of like June out there, maybe May, June. Up until last week, it was quite warm last week, but up until last week, we've actually had 2 duvets on our bed, which is really, really unusual. Usually they come off, the second duvet comes off around about April. Now, I do live in a very, very old stone house, and that part of the house, so we've got like an archway, and that kind of wing, if you like, I mean, it's not as big as to call it a wing, but that part of the house is very, very cold. So we've had 2 duvets on. One of them is just like a thin comforter on top of our regular duvet, which is a summer duvet, but even so, we've been well wrapped up till recently. So very, very strange. It seems a bit sad that we're about to enter, meteorologically speaking, we're about to enter the last month of the summer, August. So meteorologically speaking, the 1st of September is considered the first day of autumn. And I know that many of you are looking forward to the bare months. I think I would be looking a bit more forward to them if the weather had been a bit better. That said, last October, it was 26 degrees on our wedding anniversary, which is the 10th of October. So it could be possible that we have warmer, wetter later on in the year. And it's an indication, I guess, that everything is changing, isn't it? So it's been very cool at night, which has been lovely. The last 2 nights, there has been the most beautiful breeze coming through our window. And it's so nice being like wrapped up warm in bed and feeling that breeze on your face. I get very, very hot at night now. I've got to that age. So to have 2 duvets on the bed up until last week is very unusual. but it is cool enough that, you know, that you can just feel that cold breeze on your face at night. And I think that has to be one of the most heavenly things of all. It's just so lovely. So I'm really enjoying this weather. I've been able to sleep a lot better. Winter is just so cold, and then summer is just too hot generally. So autumn and spring, and it's just like we've had an extended spring really, or that we're already in autumn. It's been quite nice in that way. That is very, very nice. I have to say that I was a bit alarmed by, I could see all the sugar crystals in it as I was making it. It's definitely a bit of a treat, I think. Instead of a bar of chocolate or something, I think it's probably got a lot of sugar in, but very, very nice. What does it say? Just talks about Walter Whittard, product of Germany. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Thought I'd go back to that. So we are currently absolutely inundated with, and I'm sorry, I know some of you don't like this topic and you're a bit squeamish, but spiders. We have got to that part of the year. So it's the big spindly ones. They're known as cellar spiders. We touched on this last year because last year I actually found out that the cellar spiders eat the big house spiders, which is really surprising, isn't it? For me, the spindly ones are probably the worst. I don't like the way they track over the ceiling, quite often above our bed, but then they'll just drop down. Whereas the big spiders, I'm gonna jinx myself now, aren't I? The big spiders tend to be downstairs; they don't tend to be upstairs, and they'll come out. I mean, they might run across the living room floor when we're watching TV, usually with the lights off, and you'll just see the shadow. But they tend to either run across the living room floor, or they tend to come out in our bathroom, and they'll come out, sit in a position, and then they're just in and out of their little hole. I actually think in some ways the spindly ones are worse because there's a lot more movement, but they're kind of on a par. I don't particularly enjoy the big spiders, and when we get into August, that is when we're going to see them. So it's a tricky one because obviously you don't want your house to be full of cobwebs. You want to clear those away because it looks a bit unsightly, but at the same time, apparently that's how they catch and eat the big spiders. So it's a bit of a trade-off, isn't it? They create their webs, which are very loose and messy. They tend to create them up in corners of the room where the ceiling meets the walls. So that's why you quite often in bathrooms and stuff like that, our bedroom is a nightmare for them. But they eat absolutely any insects that they can find. They are not fussy at all, but specifically the large house spiders. I had a little read on this morning. I got a bit further into depth with it than I did last year. And actually, they're quite interesting. They're a subtropical species that was first recorded in Britain in about 1864. And basically, they have spread around the entire world by people. So I thought that was so interesting. So when this house was built in 1860, it's entirely possible that we didn't have cellar spiders here in the country then. I mean, they were first recorded here in 1864, so you have to assume there was probably a period of time when they were here, but no one had either noticed them or recorded them. But it is entirely possible that when the first resident of this house, who would have been the original cemetery keeper, and he would have worked in the office, which I believe is the other wing of the house, those spiders wouldn't have existed back then here. So I think that is really, really interesting. And I was reflecting this morning on how they always appear at Lunasa or just before, so which makes me think about the harvest, and it got me thinking about them building their webs and the nature of them, and it got me thinking about some messages that they can give us about, you know, how to get through life. So I was thinking they very much remind me of you reap what you sow. So they make these webs, and then they reap in their prey from making these webs. So their webs are what you put out into the world and into the universe. They tell us to be confident. You can totally get the big prizes. Whilst they're as large as the big hairy ones, they're not quite the same, are they? They're not as dark in colour. They're not hairy. They're not as big. They look a lot less substantial, and yet they catch the big hairy ones. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So they have this message to use your skill. Also, cast your web far and wide. So put yourself out into the world, make yourself available for opportunities, and be patient. So they make these webs. I keep going to say nests for some reason. They make these webs, and then they have to be patient, don't they? And your time will come. So I thought these are all lovely messages from Cellar Spider. Be creative. It will reward you. So the webs that they make aren't particularly neat. They are very loose. They're very messy, apparently. And I kind of related that to being creative, not sort of sticking within rigid lines. So if you imagine a beautiful spider web that has that lovely shape, a traditional spider web that we think of, absolutely beautiful. But in the case of the Cellar Spider, they step out of the box. They're out of the box, and they create something just completely random and messy, and that catches them their prey. So look after your home, and it will look after you. Again, I could probably come up with lots of phrases and metaphors for the good old Cellar Spider, but yeah, they make a home actually underneath the kitchen cupboards, so on the kickboards. So while I'm sitting here with my feet dangling down, I'm a bit like, ooh, I haven't got any socks on, so I'm hoping nothing is going to brush against my foot. So on the Witching Week, we don't normally do politics, even if it is something which is huge and going on. Like, we didn't cover the recent election here in the UK. We are a politics-free zone unless it's appropriate, unless it makes sense, unless it's apt. So on Sunday the 21st, so just a few days ago, Joe Biden, he announced that he was pulling out of the presidential race, and he actually announced his Vice President Kamala Harris as the nominee, basically. So not very long, within 24 hours, so in less than 24 hours, she was branded a witch. So she has been accused of using occult verbiage, of invoking satanic force, and casting spells. So less than 24 hours after saying that she is going to run for the presidential race, she's been accused of this. Now, obviously, she'd be the first woman. She won't be the first nominee, I'm sure. I think Hillary Clinton went for it, didn't she, some time ago? I'm not very up on US politics, I have to say, not in the same way that I am UK politics. But it just seems really, really unfair. And it also makes me think, in terms of the world, is that all we've got in 2024? That because we don't like somebody, we are reduced to accusing them of witchcraft. It just seems so backward and just so, silly. I mean, I know that's like a very typically British thing to say, but it seems very silly. It's like, the people that are accusing her, I just want to say, you silly sausages, because it's just daft. So there was something she said, and it just sounded, I guess the way it was phrased, it just sounded a little bit odd. But she was accused of Luciferian and Hermetic language. And via this language, she's accused of being a communist. So I just find it really, really interesting how these politicians, because they don't like her, or, whoever else they're picking on, because they oppose her, they're suddenly an esoteric expert. They're suddenly an expert on the occult, and I find that really, really funny. And then really that makes me want to say, well, why are you an expert on the occult? Maybe you're the Satanist, maybe you're actually the witch. But of course that doesn't ever happen, does it? She's also been described as not being fit for the job because she's not a mother. And again, like, this is 2024. This is just absolutely nuts. And I'm sure if she was a mother, then we'd hear the opposite story, wouldn't we? We'd hear that, she's not fit for the job because she hasn't got the time, and how can she be a mother and be the president of the USA. But she's got two stepchildren, and anyone who's ever been a stepmother knows what a difficult role that is. Quite often you face opposition, so really she's perfect for the role. Quite often you face opposition and you have to balance things very carefully. You have to balance the needs and wants of children that are not yours, but it's also your home, so you have to consider your husband, and then quite often there is an outside influence. Not everybody is mature when they have children and then they're no longer with that person. Quite often they will not treat the step parent very kindly. So I actually think it makes her perfect for the job rather than makes her, not good for the job. And I'm not talking, when I say it makes her perfect for the job, I'm not saying that, I think she's wonderful or brilliant. I don't really know much about her. I'm just talking in general terms. So I think it's really, really sad that in 2024 we have resorted to naming a woman who might be the first female president, that we have to go there, that we have to do this. Why can't people just stand and then we judge them on their merits without the name calling, without the witch hunts, without all the silliness, basically? There was a 2014 prophecy. I'm not going to call it that, but people have been calling it that, by a man called Kim Clement, who is a preacher and a pastor. He's no longer with us, that he said that there would be a witch in the White House. So maybe he's going to be correct in that she's going to get in and she had been called a witch, but I doubt very much that she is an actual witch. It doesn't seem like there's any basis in fact there. It's just mudslinging. It's just mudslinging. So what have I been doing this week? What else has caught my eye? Well, I've been watching on Netflix The Man with 1,000 Children. Excuse me. This is the problem with drinking and talking when I do the Witching Week. You end up full of air. So I'm hoping I can finish this by the end. But it does make you burp. Right. So A Man with 1,000 Kids. So this is a programme about a Dutch musician and YouTuber called Jonathan Mayer. And he was a sperm donor and he wanted to help families. And initially that's what he did. And he told each family that his aim was to help 5 families within the Netherlands. So it is believed that this guy actually has in excess of 500 children. Now, I've only watched the first episode and I don't think we've got to the point really where he's got more than 5. I'm just trying to think where I've got up to. I've had to rewind it a couple of times. I had started episode 2, but I kept falling asleep. So I've gone back to episode 1, but I can't quite remember where the cutoff is. But anyway, he's got about 100 children, they think, at this stage. And just even like one episode in, you're just thinking like, why? You have to wonder about the psychology of these people. Now, at first, obviously, the first couple of families, it felt very altruistic. I don't think he's getting paid to do this. He wanted to help people realise their dream. So there are all sorts of different couples they've shown in the programme. There's a couple that couldn't conceive because of fertility issues in the man. There was a lesbian couple. I think there were a couple of single females that couldn't, do it any other way. But it's starting to feel very yucky. Obviously, you've got to think about the desperation that the families are feeling when they're going to the lengths that they have. And, you do have to question the agenda, because this guy did have sex with at least one lady. Like I said, I haven't got too far into it yet. I don't know how many episodes there are. There are definitely 2. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. If you like documentaries on people and you're interested in what makes people tick and how they behave the way they do and the kind of things that they get up to, then this is well worth a watch. It's a nice, simple, easy watch. It is unsettling and it is disturbing. And they go into talking about how they inseminated themselves and stuff like that. But it's very much about the psychology, I would think, as it pans out when I get a bit further, I think. And you have to think as well, like, I get if you want to help people, but there has to be a limit, doesn't there? Because if you are in a small, I think it's a small country, the Netherlands, you don't want to put too many children in that carry your genes, because obviously, people meeting half siblings and stuff like that. But yeah, really, really enjoying that so far. I haven't watched much TV recently, I have to say. I have been very, very busy with my head down, getting stuff done. But if you haven't seen it yet and you just want a sort of a documentary that doesn't require too much brain power, then that is going to be a good one for you, I think. So today, the 26th of July, the Olympics starts today and it runs until the 11th of August. So it got me thinking about the ancient Olympic Games, which were, of course, they were a devotional practice to Zeus. It was a religious festival. Yes, it was athletic, but it very much was a religious devotional practice. So the Greeks gave them a mythological origin, and the ancient Olympics are dated to about 776 BC, and they continued until they were under the rule of Rome, and the last recorded get-together celebration is about AD 393, and that was under Theodosius II. I had to read his name because I knew I wouldn't be able to remember that one. So the present day, the International Olympic Committee was founded in 1896. So about 30 years after this house was built, and about 30 years after cellar spiders were first recorded here. And it's grown to the stage now where nearly every nation is represented. It's obviously not religious in nature whatsoever. And it's really, really interesting. Go online, have a read about the ancient Olympics, and you'll see that it was originally, the original myth is that it was Heracles. I had to think about that because it looks like Heracles and his father Zeus, who were the progenitors of the games. So that's the original myth. And obviously the ancient Greeks held the Olympics in devotion to Zeus, and they have kept going all this time. I really loved the Olympics as a kid. It was always so exciting. I'm really looking forward to watching it this year. It makes up for us entering the last month of the summer, and it's just fantastic because it goes on for a good couple of weeks. So really, really looking forward to that. Let me know, do you watch the Olympics? Is it something you enjoy? I know that some of you are really into sport and then some of you can't stand it. What about the Olympics? Is that different? Do you like watching the Olympics when perhaps you wouldn't watch, the football maybe? As you guys know, I absolutely love sport. I really, really miss playing sport. So I will be immersing myself in the Olympics this year. And it got me thinking about the time of year, actually. It's interesting that it does fall at this time around Lunasa, which we're about to celebrate in just a few days. And it got me thinking about the Lammas Games, which is something that we had since about the Middle Ages. So there would be these gatherings, there would be feasting and merrymaking and matchmaking and trading, but there would also be an athletic element to it. And of course, Lunasa is related to Lu, who was one of the gods of that ancient race that I can never pronounce. I'll put the name up on screen, but he was a warrior, a craftsman, a king, and he was considered to be very, very skilled in all that he did. So traditionally, and this is being revived today, we have, I think, a Lammas Games down in Avebury, but traditionally we have these big, wonderful Lunasa gatherings. There would be a sacrifice of a bull. I'm glad that doesn't go on today. And there would be some sort of ritual dance play thing that would happen. So Lu, he had some possessions. He had an unstoppable fiery spear, which makes me think a little bit of the javelin in the Olympics. And he had a sling stone, which again makes me think of the shot put. And he had a hound. So he is said to have invented bull games and horse racing. So it's just interesting that there's this this sort of crossover between the Lammas Games and the Olympic Games and the time that they're on. So I thought we'd do some cards now. If you haven't already subscribed to my free newsletter, I'm going to put the link below, then sign up for it. If you're on Patreon, then you probably don't need to worry, you get your own newsletter. But the reason I'm telling you to sign up is because I'm going to have some 3 card spreads for you to have a go at. And if you're over on Patreon, then this is just going to be part of a wider post. I'm going to give you 36 3-card spreads that are really good for getting to the heart of a matter. So yeah, let's do some cards and see what we come up with. So when I was shuffling these cards, it very much felt like this is going to be about dealing with other people, and I've picked the cards out, and sure enough, it feels like that is the message. Now, I've been saying on this channel for a long time that people are struggling, what with the cost of living crisis, the pandemic. I've been saying it for a few years now, and I think everybody is feeling this. I've seen other people refer to this, but I think people are really struggling. We're still in a period of not knowing what to expect, really. We've just had a change of government, which was good news, but we still don't know how that is going to pan out for people and what happens to them in their everyday lives. So because of the turmoil and the upset and just the general sort of unsettledness of it all, I think a lot of people are not their regular selves. I think a lot of people are depressed, they're anxious, and they're a bit more reactive and volatile than they would have been, say, 5 years ago. So the cards that I've picked out very much nod to this theme. We have the 5 of Swords, we have the 6 of Cups, and we have the 2 of Cups. And I think the advice here from the cards is that it's a good idea to know when to walk away. When people are starting problems, are starting fights, they've got issues, maybe they're challenging you and it's a bit sort of, you know, a bit over the top or not very well placed. Sometimes you are the victor when you just get up and you walk away. And yes, you might be in a position where if you stand and fight, you are going to be the victor. But sometimes that comes at a cost. Sometimes when you have it out with someone and you say things, you might be right and you might, you know, be well within your rights to say things. But sometimes you can go away and think, well, that was a bit harsh. And actually, I feel a bit rubbish now. Sometimes it's better to just keep your peace, keep your sanity, and just go, no, I'm not engaging in this. I'm not dealing with this. So this card is very much about, you know, looking out for trouble and people starting that trouble, but it's also about knowing when to just walk away, just to go, do you know what? I'm not dealing with this today. Do you know what? This is only going to make things a million times worse if we stand and fight over this. So you're also being asked to take a bit of a trip down memory lane. So the way I would interpret this in this situation is perhaps think about how someone used to be. If it seems like they're massively out of character, they're full of this rage, they're full of this anger, they're maybe a bit depressed, they're maybe a bit anxious, you know, it's fear and love are the 2 emotions that quite often, you know, encourage people to display the behavior that they have. Ask, you know, what is it they're fearful of, or what is it they're scared of? How did this person used to be? If I have a relationship with this person, there must be a reason. It must be that once upon a time they were nice to get along with. It might be that once upon a time they weren't like this at all. So it's worth going back, it's worth thinking back, and it's worth thinking about those attributes, those reasons why you were friends or family in the first place. And then the 2 of Cups, I feel here, is just asking you to find that common ground. So yeah, go back in time, think about, you know, how things used to be perhaps before people had a lot of pressure on them and a lot of worry on their shoulders. And find that common ground. What is it you love about this person? What is it that drew you to them in the first place? What do you have in common? What can you perhaps bring up or reignite or fall back on to perhaps rebuild that relationship up? So yeah, let's have a card from the Whispering Woods as well, just to add to that. Or if you feel like that message doesn't resonate for you, again, it's not about fortune telling. It's about thinking about the way we react to things, how we can handle things. It's about development. It's about personal development and growth and evolution. And so those cards might not make sense to you at the moment, but they might make sense to you later on in the week, or they might just give you food for thought, on how to handle things in future if they ever come up. So perhaps if that doesn't really resonate with you, maybe this card will, or maybe they'll both resonate and you can put the two messages together. So let's pick you one of the Whispering Woods. And the card is Light. Look to the space between the trees for the answers. Look to the space between the trees for the answers. Light. So again, I think really that ties in with this. Look to the space between the pair of you for the answers. Where's the light in the relationship? What is it that brought you together? What is it that you share, that you love, that you enjoy? Where's the positivity? Where's the light? So that works out really, really nicely, doesn't it? So brilliant. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I'm wishing you the most awesome week. I hope you have a fantastic one. And I'll be back next Friday with another episode of The Witching Week. Have a lovely Luna. So whatever you do to celebrate, I can't believe it's this week. It seems like it was only yesterday that I said, oh, it'll be in a few weeks' time. So yeah, enjoy your celebrations. And I will see you next Friday. All right, lots of love. Bye.